ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I am your host, Rico Muhammad. That handsome fellow over there, that's Mr. Chuck Snow. And this is the Rates and Lanes podcast. If you guys would do us a huge favor and let us like, share, and subscribe to the videos, it helps us out tremendously, helps get us into a broader algorithm. Let some more people know about the show. And I've just made sure that we are streaming live right now on Instagram. So we have our Instagram audience joining us. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, you can type them in the chat. We should be able to see it, and we'll bring those up and on board. And boy, it has been a firestorm of a week since Sunday. Since the covers have been peeled back on one super ego. I don't know. I think this might be a trucker's content creator's dream, because I'm telling you, everybody and their mama is making videos about the whole 60-minute expose that came down on super ego. And if you watch the show for any amount of time, and if you've even been in the industry for any amount of time, everybody knows that this is not a secret. What Super Ego has been doing, they just happen to be the biggest, maybe the biggest one out of the bunch. But it's not a secret that what all that they exposed on 60 Minutes, that's child's play, and Super Ego is not the only one. They are a slew of these guys and operators that are moving in the space that are solely responsible for taking our industry right down to the toilet. So Chuck, I don't want to hog the.
You're not at all. As a matter of fact, I just got a real timely message. Would you send a quick invite to Dean Croak? He just attended a meeting today. He's hot about joining us. I was going to ask him, but with short notice, I didn't want to infringe on his privacy. This is going to be an honor because Dean just went to a seminar apparently. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the stuff we do here, bringing everything as well as we can to everybody to share information. That's what this whole podcast is about. I think all of us right now in the industry are relieved, but also somewhat embarrassed by the behavior of some people in this industry. That expose the other night on 60 Minutes I was embarrassed to be part of the industry, to tell you the truth.
You know, I understand your sentiment, Chuck, but I sent Dean the invite, and he actually sent me an email, and I just replied back to his email.
Perfect.
And hopefully
great timing.
We can get him up and on board, and that'll even help me out with the whole DAT charts. I ain't even got to worry about that.
Yeah, get it right from the horse's mouth. You see, God looks after fools and small children.
Yeah, and you can tell I'm not too small, so I got to go in the other category.
No, I think it's just because he thinks I'm a little kid because I'm so short that maybe he's looking after us.
But if you remember, you know, back in a previous show, when we was talking a little bit about this, and this was before, you know, maybe we might have been a little late to the party, because this was before I was really aware of all of the different moving parts that were taking place within the industry. We were still kind of scratching our heads about, and there he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Dean Croak of DAT.
Hey guys, good to see
How's
you.
it going, Dean?
It's so wonderful.
Yeah, I saw the your Instagram promo came across, Chuck, and I thought, wow, I'm actually at the event where they've been talking about this all week.
Oh wow, I can only imagine. So I'm going to shut up and throw it straight over to you, Dean. I don't know if you remember. Do you recall, Dean? Back we were talking, I think, latter part of last year when I mentioned to you about Super Ego and some of the tactics that they had going on.
Yes, they do. And you were spot on. Like, wow, what a story! It's everywhere. I've So yesterday we had the ATA president on, Chris Spears. We had David Heller on, TCA vice president of regulatory affairs, on today. We had the chief legal counsel from the FMCSA on this afternoon. Now, of course, they can't say much about what they're doing, but they could say enough. But I think the general theme, and of course, this is the National Association of Publicly Funded Truck Driver Schools.
Right.
So just, that's not the CVTA. It's sort of the other side of the driver recruiting school. But I was with Martin Garcia and Donnie Tuck. I don't know if you know these guys, Chuck, but long-time industry veterans. Everybody's very concerned about the CDL mills because they're all opposition to them. The thing that was interesting, and I'll cover some of the legislation that they've got in play, but it was the topic. And I'll be honest, I underestimated, I think, how much chameleon carriers were playing a role in suppressing rates.
It is huge.
Yeah, I didn't think the scale was as big as it was. And again, I'm not sure how big it is, because one bad egg doesn't mean we've got an epidemic. But heck, there's been enough suppression of rates over 3 years and enough craziness on the highways to think that there is a lot more to this than meets the eye. The thing that struck me today was the FMCSA working aggressively to put. You've heard the expression, "It'll take an act of Congress."
Yes.
Well, all of this rhetoric that they've been talking about, what they're rushing to do, because they've only got 2 years left of their tenure, and then they're done when the next administration comes in. And there's a high probability there'll be a change that the current administration will lose the House and the Senate in November. So what they're very worried about is that they all of this legislation around non-domicile CDL, chameleon carriers, CDL mills, jailbroke ELDs, the Eastern Bloc countries that are manipulating the ELDs, all the driver training standards, that they're desperate to get legislation behind it through Congress, because if they don't get legislation behind it, the next administration could come
wipe it out,
reverse it all. So that was the theme. We've got tons of things on the docket that David Heller was talking about, and they are desperate to try and get something backed up behind all of this so that it can be put into Congress and not taken away from the industry. So that was the theme. But they
Question for you, Dean. Is any of those provisions part of the Delilah's law that they're trying to push as well?
Yep, absolutely.
That's what I thought. I thought some of those provisions was in on the Delilah's law.
Yeah, yep. So all of that is there, including the removal of overseas dispatches is also part of that. Yeah, part of that language. If I can, I'll pull up the list here. If I could pull up the list of things that David Heller was talking about, that might be very helpful, because some of the things he was talking about were, I thought, very interesting, and I'll list them all. So we have Delilah's law aims to enforce the English proficiency and may alter US, Mexico, Canada trade agreements. What was interesting, Chuck, is that Canadian carriers and Mexico carriers won't be included in that. They'll just remove the licenses for drivers in other countries, or the inability to get CDLs in this state or country. The Drug Clearinghouse Act is another one they're pushing through. That will allow carriers to submit hair test results to the clearinghouse. Currently, they're not allowed. So I'll just read through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 acts that they're trying to get legislation behind. Delilah's law, of which there are multiple versions, the Drug Clearinghouse Act, the Cargo Theft Act, which is a bipartisan effort aimed at creating a coordinating system for data sharing to combat cargo theft. Data sharing is the big thing that they lack right now. The Safer Transport Act aims to modernise the FMCSA registration system. Okay. The Drive Safe Act, which is legislation to support younger drivers and create more air model ratings, as opposed to this deal where you've got to be you can't cross state borders, which doesn't make any sense if you're located in a border area. the Route Act, which is legislation to support younger drivers, in particular the 18 to 21-year-old group. And there's a bipartisan truck bill which is seeking $5 billion over 5 years for public truck parking. And this is all tied to the upcoming highway reauthorization, which runs out in November. So there's a ton of things they've got on their on the docket that they're desperately trying to get legislation behind. That was the big takeaway from out here. But if I could sort of wrap this up, and I'll stop talking. Spot rates are still up about 25% year over year, as you've got those charts there. Those charts are not because we've got more loads. Don't confuse better rates with more demand. That's not the case. The demand is still fairly tepid. Jason Miller's truckload ton mile index came out today. It measures 41 freight generating commodities across the economy. Came out up 0.3% in February, but only up like 0.9% year over year. So relatively flat. So I think the key message here is that supply is doing the heavy lifting in terms of flipping this market, not demand, which, guys, this is the first time we've ever seen this. I've never seen in my time capacity leaving the industry cause a market to flip. And
well, I mean, to me, it's pretty logical, I would think.
Yeah,
because we had so much capacity flooding the industry,
right?
And now with the same veracity, well, I don't know if it's the same veracity, but it definitely with the different enforcement and pieces that are being put in place.
Yep.
A lot of people are getting out of Dodge and packing up and going home, and so I'm thinking that's definitely.
I think that's it. I think you're right on the money. That's what I underestimated. I didn't think there was enough behind. I'll tell you what. The other thing, I was out at I won't name names here, but I was talking to somebody in the insurance industry this week about the same problem, about how big are chameleon carriers, because the story on 60 Minutes that you talked about months ago and we saw on Sunday night is also a big, Illinois, Chicago issue when it comes to a lot of these carriers that we've been talking about. And I asked the question when I was out there this week, of a big, a fairly senior person in the insurance industry, I'll leave it at that, about how do they get insurance?
I was wondering that too.
Yeah, and I said, so how do they do it? And he said, well, most of them can't get coverage in the standard market, and they get rejected by all of the underwriters in the standard market, like we would consider, Great West or Progressive or those companies. And they end up in what's called assigned risk pools, where the state they're in has to insure them. It's the highest risk carriers. But losses in the assigned risk pool, losses are spread across the entire market. So they've been able to get insurance through changing, DOT numbers, MC numbers, moving trucks around different company names. But here's the thing. The 2025 loss ratio for assigned risk pools in trucking, these are the riskiest of the riskiest, was 190%. So the assigned risk pools were paying out $1.90 for every dollar in premium. The standard market that we're all in, 75%. So in last year, these chameleon carriers in the assigned risk pools accounted for $625 million in losses for $436 million in premium. And you've heard this term ghost fleets?
Yes.
Well, the ghost fleet is where they would have 100 trucks in their fleet, but only insure 50 of them.
Okay. I just put up a picture. I don't know if you guys see that or not, but just take a look at how.
Yep.
How many times, and you see this going up and down the road all the time.
Yep.
You got one company's name placarded over or duct taped over with cardboard, handwritten DOT numbers, so on and so forth. And I think that for all enforcement officers that are riding down the road, every last one of these trucks, these should have a big bullseye on them that should be pulled over, should be inspected to the T, because this is a bunch of malarkey. And so, Dean, I got another question to ask you related to, because super ego is a fairly new phenomenon.
You're 12 years old, I understand.
I think they're younger than that.
Yeah, I don't think it was 12 years, Chuck.
I think they're like 8.
Yeah, I think it was fairly recent. Yeah.
So, Dean, I don't know if you have it right offhand, but how does the explosion, because the explosion in freight theft and fraud, does that kind of correlate to about the same time frame that Super Ego and the carriers of the like have kind of exploded as well?
Well, cargo theft, the organized crime rings that are global crime rings, especially Eastern European countries that we see in our business, the dispatches that have caused so many problems over the years. So physical cargo theft is one problem, but these carriers came in because there were loopholes in the federal system.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
And same with the CDL schools, of which they're trying to reduce their numbers dramatically, and they're doing audits of them. The CDL schools, they did audits of them in December and found 30% of them didn't meet the standards. So it wasn't a regulatory problem, Rico, it was an enforcement problem. So they weren't enforcing existing rules. But when you look at, to answer your question specifically, the pandemic kind of opened the door for all these carriers to come in because there was so much money. What we're still seeing is the tail end of that exuberant market that we saw, where this massive number of carriers came in from everywhere. People were desperate to get freight moved, find trucks from anywhere, find drivers that could fog a mirror. It really didn't matter so long as we got the loads moved. What was paying for now is that behavior back then. So they're absolutely all correlated. And I think what I've underestimated, and I'm not sure I've underestimated it, that's maybe a little bit harsh on my own judgment, but I will admit if I'm wrong. But one of the things that I've said on this show is that the reason that rates have been so depressed for so long is that a lot of carriers made a lot of money during the pandemic, and that gave them the flexibility to operate at lower costs. Now, we did a survey last week, and we're finding that 18% of the carriers out there, owner operators, are taking time off while diesel prices are high. What I also found out from Todd Amon's webcast last week, ATBS, 35% of his carrier base own their own trucks and trailers. So it means that when they were able to, we talked about latent capacity that would dive back in and out of the market whenever the rates were there. Well, that's that cohort. But I think there's another cohort that I've underestimated, which is the chameleon carriers that have a much lower cost base deliberately because they're not paying the wages that other people would normally, and they're doing things differently, as we've heard from the CBS story. They've allowed the market to be suppressed also over that period of time. Now, we thought it might have been going on, but I think it's a lot worse than what we thought.
If I can interject just for a second. I think that there's definitely enough blame to go around for Super Ego. There also, some of this has to be laid at the foot of the shippers and the brokers as well.
Yeah.
This has created an environment to where people have really come accustomed to really cheap labor.
Right.
And I personally have received emails from, I was negotiating on a load with a broker, and I told the broker flat out, I said, hey, this is an illegal dispatch. I couldn't run this. This is way too many miles. And the broker replied to me, actually had the audacity to reply to me. I sent Chuck a copy of the email, had the audacity to reply to me, a strong solo, which correlates to the going kind of joke in broker circles about the strong solo Sergey.
Wow. Well, I would caveat that by saying a strong Australian solo, because that's a normal day's work in Australia, where you can run 14 hours on duty. But that's a really interesting point, because I raised that with a broker the other day, a large broker at DAT, and I said, so if you've got track and trace on those trucks and they're sending you their lat long positions under a load, do you realize that data is discoverable in the event that driver has an accident? Because you are knowingly dispatching that truck who is operating, if they're running 900, 1,000 miles, and you've got lat long plots in your data system, you are liable in the
complicit.
Yeah, and
is the actual dispatcher. He is personally liable.
Right.
If something is killed, That's on the dispatcher as well as the broker.
Right.
And this is why connecting the dots on all of this stuff a little bit, it shows for one, that, like I said, brokers were complicit in this, and this is one of the reasons why I don't think that they should be given the pass. I'm not saying there are good brokers out there. I'm not trying to paint all of them with the broad brush, but this is why there has to be some skin in the game all the way up the supply chain when it comes to different points of liability. And I'm not trying to excuse carriers or drivers that perform illegal activities, but as they say, it stinks from the head down.
Yeah.
All the way down through. So I think that if something happens, God forbid something happens to someone's family out there, I think everyone that is tied to that particular dispatch, if it's a funky, dirty dispatch, every person in every company entity in that link should be have some amount of liability in that situation. And I think that is one of the reasons. That's one of the things that I think that the explosion in plaintiff's law with all of the big truck, before, I mean, you would hear every now and again about attorneys wanting to go after big trucks, but there has been an absolute explosion across the nation, and attorneys just targeting specifically big truck and trucking accidents. And I think that all of this stuff ties in together.
Yeah, it's also, you asked me about what it's consistent with. I think it's also consistent with remember this issue about drivers taking their 30-minute break in the parking in the fuel island. See, I've always wondered, why do people do that? Why do they not understand the culture of the industry? Well, I think it's pretty easy to explain now. If there's English language issues and you don't understand the culture and you can't communicate, I can see when I look back at all of the crazy stuff I've been seeing from the seat of my truck over the years, because I couldn't figure it out. I thought, this industry's gone crazy. I can actually explain it now by thinking about all of the drivers that have gone past me in a construction zone at 70, 80 miles an hour, and you think, what the heck is going on? Or drivers,
they couldn't read. They didn't know it was a construction.
It was 80 kilometers an hour, not 80 miles an hour.
Or worse, coming back from Mid-America year before last, it was snowing heavily up through Columbus, and I'm crawling. I'm trying to find an exit. I'm trying to find a parking bay to get into to get off the road, because I'm only bobtail in the snow and it's slick. I had guys going past me in the hammer lane in the snow on unplowed roads at 80 miles an hour. Like, you can see them absolutely flying. And I thought, this is insane. They must have never driven on the snow before, was my thought. But I can look back now and think about all these white Freightliners that I see with the, handwritten name on the side. But guys, I've noticed this way back to 2018 even. I remember being in Las Vegas in 2018 and watching these trucks pulling into truck lots with their name written on the side in
magic
markers, and thought, this is nuts. I was looking at the equipment and thought, wow, this is crazy. And that 2018 was a kind of a bull market in a rate sense.
For a short period of time,
it attracted a lot.
And that just blows my mind, because me personally, when I got started in business, I went and got my logo done and all that stuff. I didn't even want to put my truck out there without it being presentable.
Right.
I mean, I try to go as so much as, and I'm just a one truck operator, but I try to wear uniforms myself.
Well, because you get respect at the front.
There's a certain, to me, there's a certain amount of professionalism that I think should come with the job, and that you want to present yourself publicly. And, I want to try to present myself as somewhat buttoned up. I don't want to, but, and just to see a truck like that pulling into my lot, I mean, I would be, that would really draw concerns. Like, damn, this guy couldn't even afford to go and spend $100 to get his truck decal before he jumped out there on the road.
He wasn't interested in being permanent under that name. He was interested in being able to move names around. Yeah.
Making ends meet for today. That's all they're interested in.
One of the things that came out of the meeting here today, the chief counsel said that they've got they call it their front door program. It's called front door enforcement. They said that so far this year, or in the last, since they came in the last year, they've turned down 29% of people that have applied for a DOT number. So
Wow.
they're tightening up the front door. And so the message was really interesting. I think I said it on the last show, is that the truckload market that you and I and Rico are looking at in the next year is going to be one where there's less capacity, but there'll be less capacity joining. It'll be harder to get into and harder to stay into, whether you're a broker carrier or a dispatcher. So I think that's evident. And they really enforced that today by talking about some of the programs that they've got before them. There was a big, Rico, down your part of the world, there was a big deal that the Derek Barrs, the head of FMCSA, participated, because he comes from highway patrol background.
Right.
They were down there and they conducted about 3,300 stops over 4 days in Florida.
Talking about when they did the Fox News piece.
Yeah, and they found it was like something like 1.5% of the drivers couldn't speak English. They found about 40 guys that had criminal records. But so it was a really interesting data point. They found like something like 62 that couldn't speak English and they showed videos of this.
Yeah.
Like, and what was alarming was this just wasn't, broken English. This was the driver couldn't
speak at all.
Yeah, but he couldn't say what a stop sign meant.
Right.
So it showed him the stop sign. He couldn't tell him what that meant, that's the worst of the worst. Like I would have thought everybody would have known what a stop sign is, no matter what the language. But no, apparently not.
We are honeycombed with this issue, and I'm all for anybody trying to support their families. So, but there has to be there's a bar that should be met. There's a minimum bar that should be met and a requirement. And I don't know how in the hell we have allowed ourselves to go down so low. But like I said, all of this kind of ties in one with the other, and you still, even with fuel prices the way that they are, you still have brokers and shippers still trying to push back on a decent rate to move freight.
Well, the brokers are following the shippers' lead. What's going on? A lot of the shippers are they're saying to the brokers, "We have a contracted rate. You've got to meet that rate." And the rate is fine for when fuel was a lot cheaper, and they've got an all-in rate, and the brokers are getting hit because the shippers are really holding the brokers' feet to the fire on this.
Well,
situation.
Yeah, this is. I think there's enough blame to go around everybody, right? But I always come back to we kind of started in the wrong place by targeting minority drivers on the side of a highway, not from the front door, because we all knew that the front door was part of the reason that a lot of these carriers and CDL schools were in the industry. Still going on today. Like we heard today of a training school that's got multiple entities. Drivers can buy $500 and they've got a CDL, no experience, no seat time. So it's still going on, and the FMCSA's kind of got and you'll love this, Rico. They've got a 1 year period where they're going to ask the FMCSA to go out and do a survey, and some people got to report back to them what they find. They know exactly who they are today. They know who these carriers are, and we've got Road Check Week coming up, and I will guarantee you that we're about to see Road Check Week rates skyrocket, because all of these carriers that have lost their ELDs will be on paper logs, and they're not going to want to be on the roads with paper logs and audits and inspectors. So Rick,
another thing that's concerning as well is that now that it's kind of gotten on America's highlight reel or whatever as far as Super Ego is concerned, but I can't remember if it was last year or year before last, but that was C.H. Robinson's Carrier of the Year.
Oh no, really?
Well, and you know what? The one thing I will say on that one, before we beat up CH is interested in the fact they picked up the load at on time. They delivered on time. There was no damage. That's how the billing was right. The documentation was right. They did a good job. That's how CH looks at it, they didn't know
They
about.
did it cheap, Chuck. I'm
Acting that-
going to push back a little bit. They did it cheap.
I'm sure that the CEO over at CH is probably hiding his face in shame, but he really didn't do anything wrong at the time.
Right. Well, I think that's the thing. Again, we come back to, we were desperate to move freight during the pandemic. A lot of these carriers came in and built records up and, like delivered freight.
Yeah.
I think things have changed dramatically since rates became much lower and people became more desperate to try and hold on to whatever profitability they had. But I think we're in the bottom phase of this. I think, Rico, these guys are on everyone's radar. Like, there's no question, talking to them off the record, that they know exactly who these chameleon carriers are. They're doing audits of them in the background. They're using AI technology to find all of them that have got all of these MC numbers but no physical address. They're trying to bring legislation in that you have to own it to start a CDL or to start a trucking company here. You have to be domiciled in the United States,
Right?
Isn't a requirement right now. So again, you've got all these loopholes that have allowed people to rort the system, and but they know exactly who they are. Like, I think that's the encouraging thing. Listening to them talk at this conference, I've not seen the FMCSA this engaged with the public. The Chief Counsel said last year at MATS they were booed by the carriers. This year, they Secretary Duffy, Bars, they were rock stars.
Yeah, of course.
You can say everything that you want about. And look, I'll be the first to admit it. I'm not necessarily a Trump fan like that, but I will give credit where credit is due. The appointment of Secretary Duffy, Administrator Bars, this has been the most consequential FMCSA in my entire career.
Yeah.
Well said, Rico. I totally agree. And the only reason the industry is coming back at all is because of their efforts.
Well, because demand is flat and there's fewer trucks to haul the same freight, and that's why rates are causing this market inflection.
Yeah.
Like this is one of those surprises this year, because we thought in November when rates skyrocketed, it was weather, which I still hold firm on the fact that weather was the big part of that. But once we got more focus on these carriers and they started to leave the industry, especially around the 12/31 insurance renewal date and the quarterly tax payments due, I think what we saw was an escalation in carriers leaving the industry. And then we started to see it's unusual to see rates hold 25 to 30% higher year over year in the first quarter, which is generally dead.
Right.
And I thought, wow, there's something to this. And the more time went on, and now we're starting to see the produce season come in. And again, on the show, I said there were 4 things we had to watch to test if there was anything behind this. Valentine's Day, avocados ahead of Super Bowl, berry season in Florida, and produce season coming out of California. Well, guess what? As I reported last week on my LinkedIn story, we've just had on lower produce volumes last week, California rates all flipped positive out of California, even though the season hasn't really started, because they've just transitioned romaine lettuce back from Yuma, Arizona, back to Salinas. So the season's about to start kicking off. When you look at outbound reefer rates in California, they're already 20% higher on slightly lower volume. So that tells me that the immigration enforcement on English language proficiency, non-domicile CDLs in California, as we suspected, would have a disproportionate effect on carriers in California. Right. And it's already showing up in the rates right now. I think if you had a reefer, and you do, anywhere near the southern border in California, they're already paying $10,000 a load out of Salinas to Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, I heard. I caught your show early.
Unbelievable. Like that, those sort of rates are nuts. And it's held on the southern border. We talked about on the show before, McAllen back to Los Angeles. That's holding at double what it was a year ago. It's been up like 40 to 50% since September, when I set up shop on the southern border. So all that capacity that runs McAllen back to California comes from California in the first place. It's a backhaul lane for produce, because most of your produce comes in through McAllen in the Rio Grande Valley out of Mexico. And those carriers and they were on TV. There was a CBS story, you could look it up. they said, we're not leaving California. We're afraid to go anywhere near where we might be harassed. Now,
Right.
these are the, our Sikh friends in California that can speak English and are American citizens. So if it's affecting them like that, you can see how this has sort of had an effect across the entire market. When you think about the chameleon carriers, the ghost fleets, the jailbroke ELDs is a whole nother story. I had no idea that there were Eastern Bloc countries manipulating ELDs and resetting the 60 and 70 every morning. I had flashbacks to multiple paper logs in Australia when I heard that.
But gentlemen, did we not know with the invention of ELDs that they would find ways to work the back room? We all knew that.
They admitted it today, Chuck. They kind of admitted it today. And one of the things they're pushing through is for the Canadian model of self-certification of ELD providers. I'll quickly give you another data point. I just found it. The crackdown on training providers was kind of staggering. The registry, they've removed 6,900 training providers out of the 32,000 CDL training schools. They've removed 6,900 training providers. 3,000 left voluntarily because they didn't meet the standards.
Right.
And there's another 14,000 on-site investigations that they've done. And 448 have been given removal notices. So what's different this year is they're out auditing these companies. When I was at JP Morgan in Washington 3 weeks ago, Derek Bars was speaking before me, and he said, I'm almost at a point where I want to take all of them out and have them reapply. And I thought that's really interesting because they had no confidence that everyone was meeting the standard.
Burn the house down and rebuild it because you don't know where the bad lumber is.
Right.
So, Dean, anything before we, I want to make sure that we get all the information out of you from the stuff that you kind of been privy to over the past few hours, and since all this stuff has kind of come out. Is there anything else important or anything else you'd like to share before we kind of wind down?
For all the truckers out there, the Road Check Week's coming up May the 12th. Get your paperwork in order. And make sure you don't take the week off because the getting's going to be good.
I agree.
This Road Check Week. It'll be like none other. I'm serious. Because they're going to be crawling through every nook and cranny in your truck. There's no question about that. And I think you want to have more paperwork, not less. Make sure you can explain especially reefer carriers. If you've been using the ag haulers exemption, the 150 air miles, make sure you've got paperwork to justify that because they'll be looking through all of that stuff. Be prepared for time. It's going to take time because I think the queues will be long. But I think the money that's going to be made this Road Check Week, don't forget, it coincides with Mother's Day when
flowers,
our Mother's Day flowers come into Miami. Man, if you can have a reefer in Miami the week before Mother's Day and the week after, if you're running that corridor, and I think you probably might be, it's going to be off the charts because it's a funnel-shaped state. There's only a few roads in and out. And
right.
Where Mother's Day flowers and berry season are going to drive a lot of volume northbound. And the I-95 corridor is going to be lit up with big long-nosed Peterbilts and spread axle trailers with money flying out the back of them.
And then right after that, you go watermelon season, the start of watermelon season, right?
Yeah.
So, guys, I have one thing to say, though. Personally, I think we need to get rid of Brake Check Week. It should be every day.
Well, I think so. I said on the show this week, I glibly said, and they'll probably be out a little bit earlier and a little bit later. I think they're already out there. I've noticed every time I've been out in my truck, I rolled into one on 84 near Scranton last week, going to Matt's 2 weeks ago. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. They got like a Road Check Week set up in a rest area.
Yeah.
And I got pulled in and they wanted to look at my title and didn't have an IFTA sticker on because I don't need to, but they went through everything. Like they were serious. And I've got a nice truck. I'm not.
I've seen your truck, and there's not a bunch of there's not a bunch of telltale signs of all the places you've been leased onto.
Exactly. I tell you what, though, the down here in the South, I primarily operate in the South, so I can speak to this with a little bit of authority.
Yeah.
There's two states that you really don't want to play around with. You want to make sure that you got your I's dotted and your T's crossed. That's Alabama
Yeah.
and South Carolina.
Yeah, really. Okay.
Alabama, well, but South Carolina, I tell you what, when you going through South Carolina, it kind of feels like you're going through the gauntlet, Jack.
It doesn't help you that you're born there.
No. I was like, man. I mean, in South Carolina, it's not a very big state. It's probably 100 miles through it from north to north,
Yeah.
from the south and the north, and you know.
Right.
And man, I counted one time going through South Carolina. They had from when I crossed over from North Carolina, and but by the time I entered into Georgia, they had about 25 trucks pulled over within that 100-mile stretch.
Yeah. And not in rest areas. They just pull them over on the side of the road. Yeah. Yeah.
And another thing to back this up, I actually 2.5-3 weeks ago, and boy, I'm glad that I run an ELD and I try to run. I do a little bit of personal conveyance here and there. I'll be honest, but I don't try to skirt it. And I was headed to go to Freightliner to go pick up a part. I had gotten loaded, had to go to Freightliner to go pick up a part. And in Atlanta, in Freightliner, if anybody knows the area, you go down the frontage road right there in Forest Park, Georgia. And man, I happened to turn down the frontage road right then, and I guess DOT just had a big hiring spree in Georgia, and they were training somebody that day, and I happened to be the lucky candidate that the trainee got the. So that was definitely an experience. All my stuff was in order. I got a clean inspection out of it.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a big deal. But they definitely with the trainee, he definitely had them going through. They gave me the white glove treatment.
I think we're about to see road check week, month. Like it's not a week. I think, and it's probably going to be all year, Chuck. I think you're right.
It's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think that because for guys and girls that are out there, because I've seen some people on YouTube talking about how they were picking on the one guy that was talking about how he drove 18 hours and so on and so forth. These people were preying on people of desperation, but this does not excuse you.
Right.
As the driver, you are the captain of the ship. You have a responsibility, ladies and gentlemen. This may sound unpopular or whatever else, but damn it, I don't want to work that damn hard. I mean, geez Louise, 11 hours of driving is enough. It's more than enough. Hell, I try to avoid driving that much still. I might be pushing maybe 8 might be pushing it for me. I don't want to drive that hard. I don't want to work that hard.
Right.
So, but you got a responsibility to the motoring public out there.
Yeah.
And trust me, I understand. I get the pressures of we're coming through the roughest market that we've ever experienced in trucking. We've been going through about 3 years of getting our asses kicked.
Yeah.
And I understand the pressures. I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, you still have to have some integrity and character about yourself.
Yeah. And
that's where integrity and character is doing the right thing when nobody's watching. Bingo. And that's where that whole piece comes in about, because you know what I'm saying, you're thinking about, well, I can just make it around this corner and everything, and trust the people that have had these accidents, these horrific accidents. They didn't have any intention. I mean, I don't think that any of them were intentionally, maliciously trying to go out and cause an accident and do it and get themselves involved in the situation that they got themselves involved in.
Right.
And you never know what might be lying around the corner. So
100%. I just want to add one thing to that, Rico. Great point. That the second you start driving over your hours, if something happens, you are criminally responsible. Is this worth going to prison for? And
exactly.
If you kill somebody with a truck, it's going to cost somewhere close to $1 million to hire a legal team to keep your ass out of jail for the rest of your life. So think about that when you're going to drive 18 hours or even 14 hours.
Yeah, it's not worth it. And just for a follow-up piece, last week we were talking, Dean, we was talking a little bit about AI and all the different things. Strategically, ladies and gentlemen, I've been still playing around with my AI, doing different things, and man, I am blown away by some of the stuff that it is helping. It is helping out tremendously when it comes to rate negotiations. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your cost into if you have an AI tool, put your cost per mile and everything into your AI tool. Upload your rate confirmations. Upload your fuel receipts. Let your AI start looking at all your information, and man, you will be blown away.
Yeah, it's clever.
By the numbers that it spit back out at you, tell you what lanes you need to concentrate on, which brokers you need to concentrate on, developing relationships with. And actually, you can even start, once you start your week out, if on your next load, before you book it, type the stuff in the AI as you're talking on the phone with the broker, and let it give you negotiating tactics and rates on where you need to be at for your it's customized directly for you.
Exactly. It learns. It gets to know you.
I'm telling you, from a strategic standpoint, you will be surprised, and that thing will help you get your get your operating costs and everything in order.
Good for you. One thing I would say is always challenge the AI conclusions. Like if it's something doesn't sound right, say, how did you arrive at that figure? And it will go away and tell you how it arrived at it. I do that a lot because when I look at data and statistics, I say, what's your source for that? And they'll come back and tell me, and it kind of blows me away. Oh, it references back to something I wrote.
well, you know what I did, Dean? You know, when you emailed me out the report.
Right.
I take the report, convert it into PDF, and I upload it into my AI.
It's pulled from rate field all the rates. You. Very clever.
I try to feed it as much data as I possibly can, because they say I'm no guru on it or anything like that, but they say that that's the more data you feed it, the better it gets. The smarter it gets, and so I've been steady trying to feed that thing and trying to get mine up to speed. And it definitely is giving me some different strategies and different tactics that I'm definitely starting to implement in my operations.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well done, buddy.
Well done.
Well, I guess if all hearts and minds are clear, I guess we'll get ready to park this thing and put it in the hole until next week, Chuck.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So if anybody, Dean, how do people find you? Where you do a show yourself? You do a YouTube. You have a YouTube. I called it earlier. Let everybody know how they can find you and where they can get hooked up with all the good stuff that you have to offer.
YouTube, DAT Freight and Analytics on YouTube. We have a show every Monday at 11 a.m. where I go through the market update. LinkedIn's the best way to contact me. If you're on LinkedIn, send me a direct message on LinkedIn with your email address, and I'll get you added to our weekly distribution list of the written report with all the charts and information, and on social media at the Grumpy Pete. So I'm sort of on all the platforms. Won't be hard to find me.
All right. Well, Chuck, let the folks know how they can get a hold of you as well, and we'll get ready to put a bow on it.
Just send me an email, chucksnow280@outlook.com with your phone number. I'll be glad to help any of our listeners. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week. Dean, thank you so much for joining us. That was fantastic. Yeah,
absolutely. At the last minute, we had to call Dean out of the bullpen. He came in. He came through and threw some strikes,
Yeah. Thank you.
So we appreciate you, Dean, for taking the time to come on. Definitely appreciate. Always gracious for you coming on, spending some time with us. And for you, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you guys, the listeners. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little time to hang out with us. We're grateful that you did so. Hopefully you found in what we talked about tonight somewhat informative, maybe a little bit of entertaining, a little bit of both. If you did, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the show. It helps us out tremendously. And with that being said, we want you guys to continue to stay safe out there, stay healthy, Stay profitable. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and we'll talk at the same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Good night.
Catch on flip flop.
Thanks, Dean.
Thanks.